In a quarry on the edge of Baalbek, Lebanon, lies a stone weighing nearly 1,700 tons. That's heavier than 6 commercial airliners combined. It was carved from the bedrock almost 2,000 years ago, and it never moved. Not 1 inch. Which raises a question that's both simple and unsettling. Why would anyone carve a block they could never lift? The Bekaa Valley looks peaceful today. Wheat fields, low hills, old roads winding through farmland. But beneath the ancient ruins here lies one of the most baffling engineering mysteries on Earth. This place is called Baalbek. In antiquity, it was known as Heliopolis, the city of the sun. Most visitors who come here look up at the towering columns of the Temple of Jupiter, one of the largest religious structures ever built in the Roman world. At the carved capitals, at the remains of the temples of Bacchus, Venus, and Mercury. The site is a UNESCO World Heritage location, and rightfully so. But the real mystery isn't up there, it's underground. Buried in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter are 3 massive stone blocks. Together they're known as the trilithon, 3 stones. Each one weighs somewhere between 750 and 800 tons. Each is roughly 60 to 65 feet long, nearly 13 feet tall. These aren't decorative slabs. They are the foundation the entire temple complex rests on. Question 1. How did Roman engineers lift and precisely place an 800-ton block with no cranes, no engines, no steel? That alone sounds nearly impossible. But the story is only getting started. About 1,600 feet from the temple sits an ancient quarry. This is where the stone for the trilithon came from. And here, researchers found something even stranger. It's called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. The name comes from local legend, but the scale is very real, roughly 1,000 tons. That's even bigger than any block already sitting in the temple's foundation. The stone was fully cut away from the bedrock on 3 sides. All that remained was to separate it from below and move it. That never happened. The stone was left there, half freed, half still fused to the mountain. As if the work simply stopped, mid-task. Why? Archaeologists don't have a single answer. Maybe the stone cracked during extraction. Maybe building plans changed. Maybe the task turned out to be beyond what even Roman engineers could pull off. These are hypotheses, not facts. No written record survives explaining why the work stopped. But the most astonishing discovery in this quarry came more recently. Near the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, researchers found another monolith, an even bigger one. Its estimated weight, around 1,650 tons. For comparison, that's heavier than 6 fully loaded Boeing 747s. It's one of the heaviest single carved stone blocks ever produced by human hands in recorded history. And it too was left in the ground. Question 2, and this one cuts deeper. If the Romans couldn't move or chose not to move a 1,650-ton monolith, why did they start carving it in the first place? Before we go further, let's separate what we actually know from what remains speculation. Fact. The trilithon blocks weigh between 750 and 800 tons each, sitting in the temple's foundation. Fact. In the quarry, roughly 1,600 to 2,600 feet away, lie 2 even larger monoliths, around 1,000 tons, and around 1,650 tons. Fact. Neither of these larger stones was ever separated or moved. Hypothesis. The exact method the Romans used to move and place the trilithon blocks. Hypothesis. The reason the heavier stones were abandoned in the quarry. Hypothesis. The complete timeline and sequence of construction for the temple's platform. This distinction matters. We're not treating guesswork as confirmed fact. We're separating what excavation and measurement have actually proven from what remains an open debate. Now to the central question. How do you even move an 800-ton stone? The leading engineering theory goes like this: earthen ramps, wooden rollers, rope, and an enormous workforce. The block was set onto wooden sledges, logs were placed underneath as rollers, and hundreds, possibly thousands of workers hauled the load along a prepared, compacted path. Elevation was achieved gradually, using a rising earthen ramp, Essentially an artificial slope, the stone was rolled up and onto its final position. It sounds logical, but there's a weak point. Modern engineering calculations show that moving an 800-ton block this way would require several thousand people working in near-perfect coordination, timing that borders on choreography. One breakdown in synchronization, and the load could crush the platform or slip off the rollers entirely. There's an alternative theory too. Not lifting at all, but controlled sliding along a specially prepared, lubricated track, with a gradually changing incline instead of a steep ramp. This version explains how sudden lifts might have been avoided, but it doesn't explain how the blocks were fitted into their final position with near millimeter precision against their neighbors. And that's another open question. The trilithon blocks are fitted together so tightly that you can barely slide a knife blade between them. How was that achieved while working with objects weighing hundreds of tons, with no modern measuring tools? A third theory concerns not method, but timeline. Some researchers propose that the lower platform may have been laid down as an earlier, separate construction phase, before the Temple of Jupiter itself was ever built on top of it. That could explain why the stonework and placement techniques of the lower blocks look so different from typical later Roman construction. Important. This is a working hypothesis within mainstream archaeology, not a fringe theory. But it also lacks full consensus and needs further research. Then there's a fourth version, the one that circulates most online, claiming some kind of pre-Roman or lost civilization with advanced technology. Let's be direct. This theory has no confirmed academic backing and no archaeological evidence. We're mentioning it here only because it exists in public discussion, not because it holds up scientifically. Back to the facts. Even setting aside every speculative theory, one thing remains unexplained. Why would Roman stonemasons carve a block weighing 1,650 tons if the technology to move stones that massive apparently didn't exist yet? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe the engineers underestimated the difficulty and abandoned the plan once they realized it wasn't feasible. Maybe circumstances changed, politics, funding, priorities, and Rome simply moved on. Maybe a more advanced transport method was planned but never carried out. All three are hypotheses. None has been directly confirmed. And this is what makes Baalbek genuinely unique among the world's megalithic sites. Here we're not just looking at a finished result like Stonehenge or the statues of Easter Island. We're looking at a process, frozen mid-motion. Unfinished work left behind by engineers who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. It's a rare case where you can literally see ancient builders approaching the edge of their own capability, and, it seems, hitting that edge for the first time. Today, Baalbek continues to draw engineers, architects, and historians from around the world. Laser scanning and 3D modeling are giving researchers increasingly precise measurements of these blocks. But no technology has yet delivered a final answer to the central question. How the Romans lifted 800 tons, we roughly understand. Why they abandoned 1,650 tons in the ground, we don't. And maybe that's exactly where Baalbek's real mystery lives. Not in the grandeur of the temples above ground, but in the unfinished work below it. Not in what ancient engineers managed to achieve, but in exactly where they stopped. If 2,000 years later, with all of modern technology, 1,650 tons is still considered an extreme mass to transport as a single object, what does that tell us about the people who decided to start carving that stone in the first place? Maybe the answer is that they believed in their own capabilities more than we can fully imagine today. Or maybe they simply miscalculated. We don't know. And maybe that's exactly why people keep coming back to Baalbek, not for answers, but for new questions.